Welcome back, my friends. I'm super excited. This is going to be a great episode. I promise you, 100% money back guarantee on this episode. So today we're going to talk, you're going to learn about civil procedure and these complicated legal rules and arbitrations and class actions and how the procedural mechanisms all work. And you're going to learn about it in a fun way. And I'm going to use this example of this class action against HBO. All right, so you're going to learn a lot. It's going to be a great episode, I promise. What I want to talk about is HBO, and through this case, you're going to learn about a lot about civil procedure in the United States, kind of like how cases are adjudicated and what the different rules are. This will be great for law students out there learning civil procedure, great for lawyers and people that are just interested in law. And then also, you can make money. I could make you money on this case, and I can explain how, I had a couple of people say, oh, come on, Samo, I love HBO. And look, I love HBO too, dang it. I love HBO, and I know a lot of you love HBO. And get this, you're going to love HBO a lot more because they're going to give you money. All right, so you're going to love HBO. We're all going to love HBO more because they're going to pay us. All right, and I'm going to tell you how. Okay, so what HBO has been doing is the following. When, let's say you subscribe to HBO, and this qualifies for those of you that never paid for a subscription. If you kind of got that trial subscription for free, for a little while and then just never actually did the subscription, you don't want to pay that $13 a month or whatever it is now. Okay. So this qualifies for you as well. So what HBO has been doing for over a decade, the exact timing is not yet 100% clear. It might be way longer, but when people when they watch certain things on HBO, when they log in, they then send that information to Facebook, for example, right? And so let's say Joe Samo, I love The Sopranos. Okay, I watch it all the time. Okay, in fact, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to have a secret Sopranos reference today. And anyone that drops it in the comments, if you pick the secret Sopranos reference, I'm going to give you a shout out or a Sopranos mug or something, whatever you want. Okay, that was my buddy Mateo's idea, this little secret Sopranos reference. So let's see if you pick it out sometime in the show. All right. So I love watching The Sopranos, for example. And I do have HBO, okay, because I love HBO, especially because they're going to start paying us money. So then HBO sends Facebook this information, and Facebook says, okay, well, hey, it so happens that Joe Samo has a Facebook account also, and he likes The Sopranos. So then they have that information on me, dang it. And the HBO, to get them to identify me, right? Because there may be other Joe Samos in the world, I take it, or there's a lot of common names, Stephen Mitchell, John, James, whatever, right? So they have to identify these people. So they'll give Facebook these people's names, their emails, their addresses, things like that, so that they could identify them. Then they'll link my Facebook account to my HBO account, right? And they'll then populate advertisements just for me. If he likes The Sopranos, maybe he likes Godfather. Maybe he likes, what's it called? Goodfellas, which I love the Goodfellas, right? Maybe he likes, these other movies, whatever, right? And if somebody watches, Harry Potter, they'll populate advertisements there. So, so what Facebook and HBO were doing is that HBO would give them all this information, and then afterwards Facebook would start populating this or gear advertisements toward me. Now, the reason why this is kind of dangerous is because a lot of times, HBO could get hacked, Facebook could get hacked, and then that information is then disseminated to Facebook, and Facebook has an agreement that once it has your information, they could sell it to other people, they could transfer it to other people. So all of a sudden, information about you, and it's not just, okay, fine, this guy watches, every freaking Brad Pitt movie out there, okay? It's not just that, it's also your name, your last name, your email address. It could be, your physical address. It could be, profile, passwords, all of this information gets shared, right? or could get shared or could get hacked. And then Facebook gets that information and they disseminate it to other people. So it's kind of like, there are laws in place to try to put barriers on that. So it's an important issue. It's not like I'm here saying, oh my God, everyone's going to find out you like Brad Pitt, right? That's not it. Okay. So this is what HBO is doing. And by the way this came out was weird. HBO wasn't disclosing this. They weren't telling customers this. They weren't getting consent. The way this kind of came out was in the 2016 election. We all remember Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. So Facebook was doing something then, which was kind of like they were helping get more political ads. And one of the things they were doing is, if somebody's really like Googling a lot of political things or looking at a Facebook or they like certain political comments, and then we'll populate more to this person or that person, blah, 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 right? So then ultimately Congress had Facebook come in and explain all of this. And then they had to also like produce all this paperwork to Congress and kind of like what they were doing, how they were doing it. And it just so came out in that context, they people started finding out, oh, wait a minute. HBO, like they get all this information from HBO also, and then they use that information to see where they could populate certain advertisements to these people and whatnot. So that's kind of how all of this came out, right? It wasn't HBO like kind of like explaining this to people, okay? And keep in mind, this is the ongoing investigation. So it could be that HBO did a lot more than this. It could be like some of the things I'm saying is it came out before, came out a little after, because there's a lot of investigation going on. So it's a pending investigation, so to speak. Okay. So that's how it came out. Right. And now, the cat's out of the bag, right? So HBO was doing this for several years or decades. Like we don't know to the extent yet, but it's definitely been several years. And they were doing this without getting the proper consent and informed consent from customers, right? So what the heck happens now? All right. So now comes, all these like crazy legal issues that are, to me, is very, very interesting. And I'm going to explain why. All right. So it dates back. There was in the 1980s, Congress passed this law, the Video Privacy Act. Okay. VPPA. Okay. It's the Video Privacy Protection Act. Video. This all came out in the 80s because Ronald Reagan, the late President Ronald Reagan, he nominated a judge to become a Supreme Court judge, Robert Bork. It was like this, and I remember the Bork. I'm an old guy, right? I remember the Bork confirmation hearings and whatnot, and he was bounced, like he didn't get in. All right. And one of the things that happened was he used to rent videos. And all these guys over here are getting nervous. He was renting these video cassettes, okay? And it just happened like the video cassette rental company, like they kind of thought it was interesting. So they disclosed to the media what he was renting. And then the media said, oh, the future Supreme Court judge was renting these movies, or whatever, right? And I don't want to say what it was because I don't want to get sued myself, right? I didn't get permission from him to disclose this information or his estate, now that he passed away. So anyway, so then Congress said, this is not cool. So they passed the Video Privacy Protection Act, okay? And it covers, any sort of, people, like what they watch, and it's been, also now the case to say whether it's like physical videos or what they're streaming online and all of that stuff should be private, darn it. And the only way that information could be disseminated, properly is if you get the person's like informed, proper consent, right? And then laws kind of came out, and edits to this law because, to keep up with technology, like the consent has to be informed. It has to be done like in a separate manner. It has to be conspicuous, things like that. So all of those measures have to be taken before they could start, selling this information or using it or sending it to other entities and whatnot. Okay. So now comes what's in law, there's this thing called remedy, right? And the remedy, there's even classes, they're just called remedies. And what that means is, all right, even when a company does something wrong, what's the remedy? Okay. Now, one remedy could be there's this class action that was filed earlier this year on March 8, 2022. March 8 is the birthday of my very good friend Samir. All right, hey, happy birthday. No, it was filed on that day, right? So it was filed that day, and the allegations, everything I was saying and all the stuff, that Facebook was getting this cookie information, I love the cookies. I get scared with cookies. So I always make make sure my computer's off, the private settings off, because that cookie shit scares me. Okay. So anyway, this class action was filed, right, by against HBO, and here's the complaint. It's called. So what the mechanism with a class action goes like this. It's on behalf of these two people, Miss McDaniel and Miss Simon, right? So these two people, they're what's called the named plaintiffs in the class action, okay? And I'm not violating their privacy, darn it, because this is a public record, this federal action. So this class action was filed against HBO. Now, what the class action does is this. Most people are not going to want to listen to this podcast, right? And most people are not going to read all this law about class actions and privacy acts and whatever. And a lot of people are like, I just don't care, whatever. They want to know I watch Lord of the Flies. I don't care, they're not going to understand all the ramifications, or they're not going to take the time to learn it, right? And if they get some sort of paperwork in the mail, they're just going to toss it, right? So the theory behind the class action is this. The law firm sues HBO for these two people, and here's the key words, and for others who are similarly situated. Those words, similarly situated, is in as class action and civil procedure folklore, right? Similarly situated, because the mechanism goes like this. What they'll do is only these two people are suing HBO, but they're gonna get every other customer to tag along in this class action, right? And the benefit is that if they prove that there was violations, either there'll be a trial or there'll be a settlement, and then HBO has to come out and say, okay, what we're gonna do to settle this is we're gonna give everybody, $100, okay? That's the settlement. And the law firm that represents the plaintiffs love this, because let's say there's 50 million people in the class, right? If 50 million people get $100, that's $500 million. And then the beauty is that the class action law firm, the law firm representative, they get 25%. So they may get $125 million, right? And then every class member gets, $75, right? That's 75%, the law firm gets 25%. So then everybody gets a check for $75, you've probably, a lot of you have probably gotten a check for $20 or $10 or $8. It's after this whole class action situation, is kind of done, right? Now, here's what HBO did. Okay. Oh, those of you that love HBO, here we go. HBO said, we can't allow, they go to the federal court and said, no, we don't want this class action, because everybody that has HBO agreed that they would never join a class action. You guys remember that, right? Everyone agreed. You guys remember agreeing? Everyone that has HBO agreed that they would never join a class action. You know how you click agree when you sign something, right? So there's lawyers like myself that read all those agreements and print it and discuss it. And then there's a lot of lawyers that make a lot of money drafting those agreements. It's pretty crazy, because you got lawyers making millions of bucks to draft agreements that nobody reads. Okay, one more time. Lawyers are drafting agreements and getting millions of dollars, and nobody's reading the agreements, okay? Except that when this comes up, then we kind of bicker about these agreements that nobody reads, okay? Gotta love lawyers. So here it is. This is just a small portion. I didn't want to print all of it out. I read it on the computer because I can't stand wasting paper. So this is just a small portion of it. It's called in every single contract with these big companies, on the internet, it's called dispute resolution, meaning if you have a dispute with HBO, what's the dispute resolution? Okay, and several times it's kind of written like this. Okay, here we go. HBO and you being the consumer, agree to arbitrate all disputes and claims, okay, except for, the only exceptions are like if there's like certain copyright things or if there's like a physical bodily injury, which I don't know how that could be, so with those minor exceptions, everything you agree that you will arbitrate it, okay? And what that means is you agree you're not going to go to court. You're going to go to a private lawyer. That's an arbitrator. This is basically a private lawyer who determines the case, right? Or adjudicates the case, right? The agreement to arbitrate is intended to be broadly interpreted. It includes, but is not limited to. Now, by the way, here's a little grammar note. I hate when lawyers say including, but not limited to. You don't need the words, but not limited to. You could just say including, okay? So it includes, but not limited to, claims arising or relating out of any aspect of the relationship between us. Claims that arose before any prior agreement. Claims for mental or emotional distress, okay? Claims that may arise after you leave HBO, okay? So what this means is what you're agreeing to in this agreement button that you never hit, you're agreeing that if you ever have a dispute with HBO, you're not going to sue HBO. You're going to go to arbitration. And then it goes further and it says you're also agreeing, you're specifically agreeing to waive your right to a trial. And this is the key also, and you're waiving your right to participate in a class action. All right. So what the heck? Okay. So what you agree to with HBO is that you'll never sue them and you'll never join a class action. And the reason why that's important is because then HBO kind of, they filed in the federal court a motion, what's called a motion to compel arbitration, meaning they said to the federal court, hey, judges, all these consumers agreed that they would never sue us and that they would never join a class action. So all this whole lawsuit is bogus. And guess what? HBO's right. Okay, that is the law. HBO could bounce all those things. All right. Now, so there's no class action remedy for all these people. Okay, and it gets a little bit worse, believe it or not. Now, it gets worse, okay? And this is what I mean by worse. Like, there's this other provision that says pre-arbitration notice of disputes. A party who intends to seek arbitration must first send to the other a written notice of dispute. The notice to HBO should be sent to, by professional mail or professional courier or U.S. mail to, and then they have their address in New York, okay? And this is what bothers Joe Samo so much. Ready? Everyone ready? This is the thing that offends me and gets me my blood boiling, and I'm going to explain why. The notice must include your name, your address, your email address, a description of the nature of the dispute, an explanation of relief sought, your signature, and it must be sent via mail or professional courier. The only thing I hate about all that is the part about the mail. Why do they force you to send it in the mail? I'll tell you why. Because they know it's a little more expensive. It's a little more timely. You got to print it. You got to mail it. You got to buy a stamp. And they know that less people will send it in the physical mail. I mean, think about it. When you pay HBO, do they require payment via mail? No, they could just auto take it, right? Automatically take it out of your account. When you sign up for HBO, you could sign up on the internet, right? They don't make you send a physical letter saying, add me to HBO, right? Sorry, see, I'm getting so upset. I can't even talk, right? Welcome back. Okay. All right. So I had to drink some water and take a little second here to catch my breath because, like I said, I get so upset. So you have to send all this via physical mail. The reason why they make you do that or they make you agree to that is because they know a lot of people won't do that. Then they say, even after you do that, you have to wait at least 60 days for us to either resolve it or, then you could file your action if it's not resolved. So they make you send something in the physical mail and wait 60 days. Again, when you want to sign up for HBO, they don't make you send anything in the mail, and they certainly don't make you wait 60 days before you sign up for HBO, right? So I wish there was a law that said, however they make you start the process, they have to also only be able to collect money the same way, right? Because then they'd say, just go ahead. I mean, obviously, email is just as good as mail. If they're taking emails and they're taking money via electronic means, they don't take it via physical mail. So anyway, okay. Then the arbitration, how it works. This is important. There is a law that says if these big companies force consumers to go to arbitration and they force consumers to, file separate actions instead of a class action, then the law is that the big companies have to pay for the arbitration fees. And that's significant because arbitration fees, these very rich lawyers that become arbitrators, they charge thousands of dollars per case, right? And so the arbitration is a very costly endeavor, okay? So the rule is if the big companies have in their adhesion contracts, it's called, these little contracts that they draft and everyone has to agree or they're screwed or they can't get the service or whatever, then the big company, not the consumer, the law is that the big company has to pay for the arbitration and there has to be a fair arbitration. So theoretically, the fair arbitration is the American Arbitration Association, and there's other ones, one that's called JAMS. Those are considered fair arbitrations, okay? And those corporations, JAMS, AAA, this and that, they kind of have rules that they set in place to try to avoid arbitrators being biased toward the big companies because arbitrators only get paid when they get these cases, okay? So they don't want arbitrators that always rule in favor of the big companies in the hope that the big companies always try to select those arbitrators. When you go to court, you can't select the judge. You can maybe bounce one judge, strike one judge or two, but you can't choose which judge. However, when you go to arbitration, you could choose the arbitrator. So there's this theory of this financial incentive to help the big corporations, okay? Anyway, so the law is that if they force you to arbitration, you have to go to one of these good arbitration companies and the HBO has to pay for it. Okay, so now, finally, I can explain the remedy, okay? Here we go, and here's how we could make, you could get your fair share because the law is that if they disclose this information, sometimes there's what's called, there could be statutory damages, which means just by violating this law, they owe you $5,000, for example. And then there could be what's called actual damages, meaning like they violate this law, and if you could prove that that information led to an identity theft issue, then you could get more than the statutory damages. That's difficult to prove just because if you have been a victim of identity theft or you get these weird calls or someone tries to hack into your account or they set up a credit card in your name and and it eventually got like disputed and taken off, it's hard to prove that that was because of something HBO did in 2012. Do you see what I'm saying? So those are tough to get. That's why the law a lot of times allows for what's called statutory damages, okay? Meaning just by them violating this, you're entitled to these damages. And it's fair because you could be a victim in the future of identity theft. You could or should get credit monitoring where, like for $30 a month, you can monitor your credit. Do you see what I'm saying? So all of those things are why they're statutory damages. Now, the deal with HBO, the only way that the best remedy is this. The consumer lawyers like myself, we then, because we can't like add everyone in a class action because of this contract that everyone signed, we have to kind of like have our own individual plaintiffs, okay? And every plaintiff, what we do is we just, we kind of automate the system, hopefully, right? And let's say we get like, 5,000 people or whatever it is, right? We would then we have to then send a letter, get it in the printing press, right? The good old fashioned printers. And we have to send these letters to HBO, all right? Saying, hey, we represent, Quentin, okay? And we represent Quentin and we need to, address his situation. He had HBO Max, blah, 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 blah. And then if we want to get Quentin all his statutory damages, you owe him $7,000. All right, here we go. Now, HBO is going to get 1,000 of these from us, right? Or from other plaintiffs' lawyers. And that HBO has a choice. They could deny every single claim. If they deny every single claim, everyone ready? Everyone sitting down for this? Then we would file an arbitration for every single case. And then HBO has to pay like $6,000 to defend it. Okay. They're the ones that set up the system. All right. So don't look at me. All right. They would have to. So if we filed 1,000 cases and then they have to pay $6,000 per arbitrator, that's like $6 million just for the arbitration fees and then their own law firms and whatnot. So obviously HBO, and they're freaking guilty, right? They did this, like if we could prove it, right? So the way the only remedy for consumers then is that when that's filed, then HBO would come to us, me being the lawyer for all these consumers or those other plaintiffs' law firms, they would come to us and say, all right, let's make a deal. We'll give everybody $3,000, right? All your 1,000 clients, we'll give them $3,000, right? And that's the remedy, okay? They're still way better off because then, 1,000 clients, $3,000, that's $3 million, right? They're still way better off because if they have to pay, $100 to 50 million people, that's like, it's $500 million. So the system they created is still way better for them, right? But at least, I when I explain this to my wife, and usually then she falls asleep, I'm like, this is awesome. This is like consumer warfare. This is seriously warfare between the plaintiff firms and the defendant law firms. But anyway, that's how we make the money for the people. And if you had HBO, run it by my lawyer, 619-672-1741. Now that you know the civil procedure process, and if you stayed awake during this whole podcast and during this whole civil procedure lecture, if you stayed awake, you deserve a few $1,000s, all right? And let me get it for you, all right? That is what we do as plaintiff lawyers. We did the same thing with T-Mobile. Some of you called me in the past week because T-Mobile leaked data too. And the reason why I wanted to do this lecture, because a lot of people are like, what do you mean you're going to get me money from T-Mobile? Is this legal? Like they look at me like, is this a scam? And I go, no. In fact, I was talking to one of the clients this morning and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to, after I do this podcast, you could listen to this whole 30-minute podcast. Okay, Leo, this is for you, this whole 30-minute, 40-minute lecture, because it is a complicated procedure. And the beauty is then, from the client's point of view, you sign the paperwork and then the lawyers do everything. And we got to take this fight on, because if we don't fight this, we don't take the remedy for the people here, then the big companies could get away with all of this, which is the last thing we want to do. So if you love HBO and you have HBO, call me. You're going to love HBO more because I can get you money from them. All right. On another note, anything you have, please always feel free. Hey, forget about this. Any other situations? I love hearing from you. In fact, the reason why I did this whole podcast is because I heard so much from you after I was explaining this in a little bit in terms of T-Mobile. All right. So I said, let me explain the whole civil procedure process. Thank you so much, folks. If you're still awake, I love you, and I'll see you next week.